exec committee meeting. Just want to remind everyone that our meetings, as always, are being recorded. Not that I need to remind anyone to be on their best behavior, but just an announcement that meetings are being recorded. And so with that, that's the introduction for item number one. Number two, are there any issues, concerns, or modifications with the agenda? Hearing none, I entertain an approval for tonight's agenda. Mr. Gordon, can I get a second? Second from Mr. Lafayette. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Hearing none, thank you. All right, let's keep it moving right along. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes for the March 21st exec committee meeting? If not, you can either express any edits now, or you can do like Barbara and send your edits into the office. And so, seeing nothing from there, let's move to item number 4, chairperson's report. So, a few things I want to mention. Number one, I want to mention and remind everyone that the office has been very helpful in helping me with creating a form where we can learn a little bit more about the planning together initiative from Speaker Corey Johnson. And so while you will receive meeting notices if you've not already done so, and they will be under the auspices of the Land Use Committee, I do want to remind everyone that on Thursday, April 29th at 6 p.m., we will have a presentation from the Assistant Deputy Director for the New York City Council's Office on Strategic Initiatives. We'll have the opportunity to ask questions and engage and, do what we need to do. Leading into the conversation, we were hoping to have an opportunity for on that night to hear different sides of the proposal, but as calendars would work out, we're only going to get this one side of the proposal from the Speaker's office, which I think is fine. I think it gives us a chance to drill deeper and get greater context for what this is all about. So I remind everyone again, if your calendars allow, please participate in the special meeting notice, which will take place again Thursday, April 29th at 6 p.m. And I'm certain the board office has sent this around to several people. So look forward to seeing you there. The other thing I wanted to mention is, as I mentioned to you before, I don't have a monopoly or a crystal ball on how to be a chair. Some of this is based on the collaboration I have with each of you. At different occasions, I've reached out to each of you to get your insight and learn things. And then I lean on my experience as second vice chair and being part of the exec committee for so many years. But now I get a chance to do it through my lens with your cooperation. If it's right, then we all celebrate and we did it well. If it's wrong, I'll take the heat for that. I'm fine with that. I'm going to sleep well at night. That being said, I spent a considerable amount of time reading the bylaws and understanding what we have the provision to do or not to do, and more importantly, what the chair has the provision to do and what not to do. And so in reading the bylaws, I clearly see that there are no limitations to committee structures. And so with that, I wanted to announce tonight that I've asked Dorothy Christophin to serve as an additional vice chair to the Land Use Committee. So Dorothy will be serving as a vice chair. It will still remain Carlton as chair. You will still have Irene as chair, but Dorothy will be an additional vice chair. I'm doing that for twofold. One, because I've had a chance to, and Dorothy, if I embarrass you, you can take your screen off. I've had a chance to observe Dorothy in action. I've seen the way she's been able to bring her expertise and her experience to the table and be very complimentary to the leadership of that committee. And in the spirit of succession planning, which I'm hoping to do with each of the committees, so that when someone makes a transition, you're not left with, oh my goodness, what are we going to do next? This will be a great way to kick that off. And I hope everyone agrees that Dorothy is a good choice. And I hope that you agree that this is the right way to go. If it's not the right way to go, I'll take the blame. If we all agree, then we all did well. So let me stop for a minute. Let me congratulate Dorothy. Let me turn the mic over to Dorothy to see if there's anything you wish to share If not, we just continue to clap and it'll be fine.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be able to take on this role, and I'm really happy that I get to overlap with wisdom with Carlton and Irene. There's so much more to learn and so much history to share and so much future to plan for. So thanks. I'm happy to be here.
Audrey's been most helpful, and we're glad to have her. I was happy to have her on the committee, and now we'll have her as a so if somebody will help back us up.
Good job. In like manner, we want to also announce that at the Transportation and Public Safety Committee, we're making some changes there as well. You know, life is real, and there are things where sometimes you just have to, you know, work with life and do what's best for you. We all love our district. We love our communities. We do this voluntarily. And let me say now, no matter what kind of comments you may hear, whatever you read, some of the frustration that you may exhibit in your respective committees, I appreciate everyone who's been on this journey with me and those who will be on the journey with me going forward. And I applaud anyone, whether it be voluntarily or through employment, when you can leave on your own terms. And so with that, I want to thank Juliet Cullen Chung for her excellent leadership and patience and smile, because she's always been that. No matter how crazy things get, she's always that level, calm person in the room. And I know that through what I've exhibited in her leadership, but also through some of the counsel and advice she's given me when we've spoken, you know, off the record. And so I appreciate all of that. And so, Juliet, we want to wish you well. Now, we're not saying goodbye, because, like the true committed person that she is transitioning. So she's leaving the position as chair, but she's not leaving the committee. So more, I'll let her explain more about that later, but I wanted to say congratulations to Juliet. I appreciate everything that you've done and look forward to seeing your smiling face as we continue to move on with the leadership of this committee and community board.
Thank you, Lenny. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And so what I've done there is I'm going to what I like to refer to as my reliable, right? And so my reliable person, I'm calling back. I had to, you know, pull in a favor, maybe a couple of dinners at Peter Luger, but in any case, my good friend Sid Meyer has agreed to step up and help us with transitioning as chair for the Transportation and Public Safety Committee. So as Juliet finishes out her term, Sid will be the person who will help us lead this initiative. I called on Sid for two reasons. One, we all know that the BQE cantilever is a serious project, and we have a responsibility and we have a vested interest in what happens to the future of our community. We know that Sid is someone who has always been connected to the facts. He knows how the city process works, and he's given us some historical context for things where are extremely helpful as it relates to what's going to happen in the committee, particularly as it relates to transportation and public safety. And so, Sid, I wanted to say thank you for your willingness to take on the role, and to be happy to announce that you will be serving as the next chair for that committee.
Thank you, Lenny. That's very nice of you. It's going to be a tough act to follow after Juliet, so I hope to do you proud and hope to the committee continue to work for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Sid. I appreciate that. I'm sure you'll do fine. Now, the benefit that Sid has is that he also has a person in Cheryl Gelbs who will still be a part of the committee. Cheryl has communicated to me, and we've had these conversations. And again, I repeat, sometimes life is just something that you have to take precedence for. And Cheryl, in a very responsible and loving way, is going to step down for now as vice chair. She's still going to remain on the committee, but she's making a commitment to do what needs to do because life is real. And so, Cheryl, we want to thank you for your service. I'm happy that as time permits, you will continue to still be a part of the committee. But I applaud you because sometimes people wrestle with your commitment versus taking care of what life requires. And you, in a very eloquent and very professional way, have communicated that to me. I want to say thank you for that. And I also want to let you know that as long as your time permits, you, like Juliet, have a place on the committee. And so thank you for that.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. All right, so we are transitioning to the next phase of leadership for CB2. And so I want to thank everyone for those that continue to serve, those that have stepped up and thankfully, without me having to twist their arm, have agreed to serve. And then to the rest of the team that's still present, thank you. You know, we can't do it without you. And so I continue to thank each of you for your support and will continue to acknowledge your presence as you help us grow and transition CB2. I'm always proud, and I continue to be proud to be chair of CB2 because unlike what others may think, Carol Land get a kick out of this. I still say CB2 is the best community board in the city, and so I'm proud to serve as your chair. So thank you for that. The next thing I wanted to report is two other things. One, Carol Land and I have done a lot of work engaging with Community Board 6. And so as it relates to the Gowanus rezoning, we are very optimistic based on the positive response that Carolyn and I have received from CB6 that at some point we will be having a joint committee meeting between Community Board 6 and 2 to discuss the particulars and the details of the rezoning for Gowanus Canal. And so more to come on that. We clearly don't have any further information at this time because we're still working through scheduling and things of that nature. As some of you may or may not know, the general body meetings for CB6 and 2 occur on the same schedule, the second Wednesday of the month. But the land use committees are a week apart. Ours is a week before their meeting. And so naturally, there's some logistical things that we need to work through. We haven't gotten official confirmation, but the sentiment to date has been very open, and I'm optimistic that we will have a joint committee to address that rezoning. For some of you who have been on the board long enough to remember when we had the Atlantic Yards project, we had joint committee meetings with Board 6 at that time as well. So this isn't precedence. I like to think that the committees, both Board 6 and Board 2, have always had a good working relationship through the years and through different leadership because we all committed to do the right thing from a civic engagement perspective. And so I'm optimistic that that will happen shortly. And then the last thing I wanted to report on is many of you may have heard in the news, the mayor is starting to slowly bring city employees back to office to work. And so the same thing holds true with community board. Carol Ann and I have had some discussions, as have other members of the office, particularly Taya, about how we, what does that look like for us? As you all know, because I've said it on multiple occasions, by not having an official HR department, the default HR department in this case becomes the Finance and Personnel Committee. And so when the committee meets again, we are going to evaluate and review recommendations for how to bring our office back. I'm excited in the sense that, I try to be optimistic about everything. And while I never, ever, because of what I've witnessed on my own and my own personal experiences, want to go through another pandemic for as long as I breathe, I will say the pandemic has forced us to be innovative about how people engage and meet. And as we're doing right now through this virtual conversation, it allows for productivity without having to be burdened, for lack of a better term, with the transportation of getting from meetings that move around the district, the late hours that you get home. You can be a little bit more productive from your respective studies, living rooms, kitchen, bedrooms, wherever you reside. And so because of that innovative and now embracing the use of technology in a digital space, it allows for the office to be really flexible. And so what I'm hoping is that we can do some level of in-person and remote for as long as we're allowed, but be able to implement that when we get back to a work in the office position. So as you all know, Lynn Jordan, who serves as our first vice president and chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee, who does an excellent job in both capacities, will be helping us work with the office to figure out what that looks like. And so we'll have an announcement about that shortly. And so we'll be able to transition and meet the directive from the mayor, but also be able to get back to what would look like a new normal post the pandemic. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that I haven't mentioned this in a while. We've not forgot the effort that's underway to find a full-time replacement for Mr. Paris, whether that is many options that we have to officially name someone as the district manager. But we're still waiting for some particulars from Borough Hall, I should say, about what that looks like. And so we've engaged with OMB. I'm in constant contact with those representatives, but there's some additional information. And so we hope that once Borough Hall gets back in the office, some of the files and information that we need will be available for us to move in that process as well. But all in all, I can't, I think I can't repeat this enough. The office has done a fantastic job, that we've not seen any degradation from the retirement of Mr. Paris. And so I can't applaud the office enough for the work that they're doing, both Gustavo, Taya, and Carol Ann. So kudos to all. And I think another example of just how we all work well together as a community board. So that is probably the longest chairperson's report I've given since I've taken tenure as the chair. I don't want to set any additional records for time. And so with that, I'm going to pause. Does anybody have any questions on what I've mentioned? All right, great. Hearing none, let's move to agenda item number 5, committees for action. I'll turn it over to Mr. Gordon for land use.
Okay, thank you, Lenny. All right, we have a number of items. You have a mixture of which we voted approval and we voted, we voted down. So let's listen carefully. And the first one is the MTA zoning for accessibility rezoning, which is to be referred to the City Planning Commission. The proposal is from both the MTA and the Department of City Planning, and they're proposing a zoning amendment that will allow the MTA to work with that will allow the MTA to work more effectively with private developers to help achieve accessibility for more quickly. And the proposal includes a system-wide transit easement requirement yes. One moment. Yes? Sorry. I don't know what's going on there. So there'll be a requirement for, looking for requirements so that they can be able to provide access by, let's say, elevators, escalators, in as many stations as possible. It'll be basically stations that are basically on buildings that are on top of the stations, and that the stations will then be able to provide access for as many people as possible by elevator and escalators. It'll be done through an improvement of the bonus, so that, bonus zoning, so that they will allow the developer will be able to build this, and at the same time we can help by getting the bonus zoning so that they can provide the access. We had a long discussion on this one, and while we did have a vote of 4 in favor, 3 no, and 3 abstention, most people, there was, like I say, we would say a bare majority that, went along with it, but it's not enough, and the motion had failed. The reason I think most committee members had problems with it was that they felt it was not far enough, it did not achieve or look to get more done. one of the points that came up was that the MTA would put these accessible, elevators, escalators in every third station. One of the objections to that, of course, is being in downtown Brooklyn, you have so much activity and so many people coming into each station that every third station would not be sufficient. So we did wind up actually voting against it at a vote of, what was it? Yes, 7-3. I personally favored it as a start of the work that would need to be done, but most members of the committee felt that it was insufficient and therefore voted against it 7-3.
So Carlton, can I interrupt
Yeah.
you for 1 second?
Right.
This is an amendment, right?
Yes.
So wouldn't this need to go before the full board, Carolyn?
This is supposed to go to the City Planning Commission.
Right, but it would
Afterwards.
require a vote of the full board, correct?
I don't know if it requires a vote of the full board.
No, I'm sorry, Carlton. I was asking Carolyn. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Okay.
Yes, because it's going up to the commission, and it's a citywide text amendment, it should go to the board rather than the executive committee once we have the option.
Okay. So what Carlton is giving now, we should consider this as a report. This is not necessarily a voting item, but it's a detailed report. Yes, Daughtry.
You know me, I'm going to chime in. I hope you don't mind. I would just say one of the second struggle that the committee had was that it includes so much information. It is extremely complex in terms of what they're proposing to do, and I think many of us felt like we needed more time to study it. There's an easement that Carlton mentioned. There's also an additional zoning bonus, and it reaches further out and includes additional stations in our district that aren't currently covered by the easement. So there's just a lot to chew on, and I would suggest that we try to study it, all of us, and we let the general board know that if we're going to vote on it, we need to know what we're voting on. And it being so dense, I think people need a lot of advance notice.
Yeah, no disagreement there. I'm glad you chimed in. What I would recommend is Taya was able to put the link to the information in the chat, and she also had it on the screen briefly. If you have the ability to, I would recommend that you click on the link and maybe bookmark it, get yourself a little more familiar with it, and in advance of the general body meeting, which is what the office has done a great job of doing. Now that we're getting more up to speed with capabilities through this digital environment, we'll send the link back out, the materials that I think we always send out, and then we'll encourage board members to really take time to read this, because this is dense. There is a lot of complexity and a lot of parts to this. And so the more familiar we are with the information, hopefully we'll be in a position to take a sound vote, and everyone will feel confident that they're knowledgeable in their vote. So thank you both for that point. Carlton, back to you.
Okay. Next one is One Pierpoint Plaza, which is to be referred to the Public Design Commission. This is done by Brookfield Properties, which it's that big building, office building, right along Cabin Plaza, right across from the post office. That the big one, I think that's where the federal attorneys have their offices in there, and other people have their offices in there. The work on this one was to redo the exterior.
Carlton, may I interrupt you very quickly? I'm so sorry. I'm not seeing this on the agenda, and I just want to make sure that we're all. Am I the only one that's not saying that? Or...
Yeah, I was going to wait to let you
I'm
go
sorry.
further.
Okay. I just
Because
didn't have
Carlton, I'll tell you, on the agenda that I see 101 Green, 185.
Those are the LPCs. Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I see.
It's
That's all I see on the agenda. I don't see any of the items that you referenced on the agenda.
all right. So Pierpoint Plaza is not on the agenda. All right. I guess that's going to come up in to the full board. All right.
Carolyn, is that correct?
Yeah, the thing with that, Carlton, if you remember, is that PDC already voted on it.
Oh, all right. So it really isn't. We may not even need a vote on it then. Okay. But we did like it anyway.
All right, so once again, let me just reset this. We're looking at 101 Green Avenue,
All right, these are the
185 Dean Street,
LPCs. Okay,
267 Cumberland,
right.
279 Lafayette for LPC.
All right, just the LPCs then. Okay,
Okay, cool.
thank you. All right, so the
No,
first
no
one
problem.
is the first one is 101 Green Avenue in the Clinton Hill Historic District. And basically on this one was a recommend, they wish to put in a stoop of course, at the front of the building, from going up from the street level up to the parlor floor. The stoop was removed back in the many decades ago, and they didn't have any record of it. But from what we saw, we looked at it. The proposed new stoop, very nicely done. It fits into the building, and we recommended it 8-2.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see some of there were some of they looked at other stoops. What you're looking at were some of how it would fit in. They would use other stoops in the immediate area as reference points for their proposed stoop.
Taya,
And
would you
we
do me a
liked what we
favor?
saw.
Could you
Yeah.
go back 2 slides? One more slide. Maybe one more slide. The pictures. Let's go back to the pictures, not the renderings. There you go. Perfect. Could you pause that for a second? Okay.
Yeah, those are used by the architects to say, oh, these are what we're going to do at our build at 101 Green Avenue.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is 185 Dean Street in the Bourne Hill Historic District. Okay, now this one, we had a split recommendation on this one. This was the proposal was to do full width, the interior we don't have to care about, although they are going to do an interior by which the 4 units that it currently exists will be combined into one for one big, let's say, unit for their family. It'll be a single family, now become a single family residence. The big things that we were doing on this one was a full width 2-story extension at the rear, which will be similar to the extensions that are existing next door at 187 Dean Street. There was also a proposal to do as with the last one, a stoop. They wanted to put a new stoop in the at the front, going up to the parlor floor, and it would what we did on this one was we did not like the rear extension. In addition, we received a number of complaints from people right along Dean Street who were not happy that they were going to do this extension. They felt it was going to affect them. But the big reason that we rejected the extension was we felt that it was just a heavy massing at the rear, that it would be really large, and that we rejected that portion of it. However, we did accept the portion of the stoop. We liked the stoop. We like what we saw at the front. The front was nicely done, facing right onto Dean Street. So we, by 10-0-0, our recommendation was to keep the stoop, or put this, go along with the proposal of the stoop. Stoop would be fine. However, we rejected the work at the rear, all the work at the rear. Felt that was too large. The next one is 267 Cumberland Street in Fort Greene Historic District. This is an interesting situation. This was previously rejected by us about a month ago. There were a number of complaints on this one from people in the community to the extent of a lot of the work that would be done on the sides and in the rear, and it would affect their properties. When they came back to us, they did reduce the proposals for the work they want to do at, say along in and around the building a bit. But we felt again on this one that it was just such a heavy massing going, which would not only affect the neighbors and may affect their properties. We felt that this was one that just really was just too much. So we rejected this proposal. Yes, we rejected it. 1, 2, 3, 8, 8, 1, 1. We felt that this was just, their proposals on this one was just too much for that, particular block and that particular building. Finally, we have 279 Lafayette Avenue, which is in the Clinton Hill Historic District. This is interesting because it's also the Emmanuel Baptist Church. And the application was to remove the old sign, those bulletin board type thing sign is saying, when the next services are and what's happening. And they wanted to put up a LED signs, lit signs, which would be at the front. It would be about the same size as the original proposed signs, but it'll come on, as you say, it'll be lit up. Our concerns, they came to us, quite some time ago. And our concerns at the time were that how it would affect, people, at night, especially, on Lafayette Avenue. How would it shine a lot? What they did was they would put the screens on timers so that from the screens would come off at 9:30 p.m. and it would come back on at 7 a.m. We felt that this was a reasonable proposal and that the work that they would do would, give them a chance to publicize the work that they have and services, and at the same time, not inconvenience people on Lafayette Avenue and on the corner. As a result, we voted for it 10-0-0.
All right.
That's all we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlton, for that report. Given the different nature of each of these items, if there are no objections, let's vote on these one by one. Are there any objections to that? All right, great. Let's start with the first one, 101 Green Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation. Mr. Jordan, second, Ms. Firebush. Is there any discussion on the motion? Juliet?
Just a quick question of process. Is Sid voting on these tonight?
No, you are. You're still the chair.
Okay.
We want you, Juliet.
Is there any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? All right. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so moved. Next item is 185 Dean Street. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation. Mr. Flanoy, second, Mr. Jordan. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have a question,
Yeah,
Ms. Gales?
Cheryl. Yes,
yes.
in a landmark, they're in the Borum Hill landmark, but do we concentrate on the backyards also if it's a landmark section of it?
It's one of the trickier areas, sometimes because of it can be seen or sometimes it cannot be seen. And we take some point into account of the largeness of it. Even because remember, these things can still be seen. These particular backyards are donuts. So,
Right, because I'm
yeah.
thinking of my backyard and people behind me, because
Right.
when you
Yeah.
put up that diagram, I saw other extensions in
Yeah,
that
there were
diagram.
other extensions. There were other extensions. And that was one of the things that was concerning us, was the largeness of it. Apparently there was an earlier extension granted next to the building next door, which at that time people in the air on that block on Dean Street did not like. And when this one was coming down the turnpike, so to speak, they came running to us and said, this is really very large. And we were also very concerned of the largeness of it. So we try to look at everything as a whole. And this was just, like I said, we accepted the stoop. The stoop was nice, but we just thought that the massing at the rear was just really too much for that particular, at that particular point.
Jessica?
Just a quick question for Carlton.
Yeah.
You said that you heard from neighbors that thought the extension would affect them. I guess I'm just not following how it would affect them. Do you mind just explaining?
They felt it would block light, air. It would be, it would come, it would really knock, come into their, interfere with their, I guess, enjoyment of their backyard,
Okay.
to the donut. And we've gotten this has come more and more on these brownstone buildings. They're being bought by people who have the resources really to come into these buildings and really go for large extensions at the rear. And we've been getting some pushback from neighbors who are saying, whoa, that's too much. Now we can't use it as a point to object. We do object, let's say, based it on aesthetics and will it fit and how the building will look. But we still are concerned when neighbors feel that buildings, let's say extensions coming in would it affect their own property as well.
Carlton, is it an extension of all 4 floors?
It was, I think this one was 2, if I recall. I may be wrong. Well, it did say full, we have 2 full width, 2-story, extension. That's the, on this one.
Mr. Smith?
Clarification, so we're voting both on the issue of the stoop and the
Right.
the back end addition in the same vote.
In the same vote.
Yes on stoop and no on back end.
That's correct. That's what we
Well,
did,
wait.
Brandon.
Well, let me put in a little more context. The vote was to approve and disapprove, and that's what's being recommended to us. So just for a point of clarification, you're not voting on 2 separate things. You're voting on the recommendation, which was to separate, which is one thing.
Right. It's one
That
vote.
makes sense.
Yeah. It's one proposal, although it has 2, let's
Components.
say, recommendations. Yeah. But it's one proposal, so to speak. It's one vote, one building.
Any other discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? We're good, Jess? All right. Thank you. Next item, 267 Cumberland Street. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation. Ms. Fibush? Mr. Flanoy? Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Smith?
One quick question. Were there folks who came from the community to express opposition to this application?
Oh yeah, we had several. We had several people come to us. Both times on this particular one. This is the second hearing that we've had on this in the past couple of months, and both of them we've had people coming to us. Almost everybody who's come to us on these was against it. They were against it, and some of them were really angry. But again, while we take it into consideration, we really were looking at the work as a whole, and we felt that the proposed work again was just too large and too heavy for this particular, especially on this particular block.
Thanks.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Thank you. And the last item, 279 Lafayette Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to accept the committee's recommendation. Mr. Jordan, second, Ms. Fibers. Is there any discussion on the motion? Juliet?
Will the video screens have like moving images, or will they be more static images that like signs?
I'm not sure, although you would figure with a LED, it'll probably be like little video type things.
But no
Probably,
sound,
it's
right?
probably going to be something, like a modern screen, That's that's what I would gather from what they would want to do.
And
Juliet,
any sound?
having a little familiarity with what was being asked, I happen to see some information go back and forth. I don't know for certain that there's no sound, but I'm going to make the presumption that it's really meant to just display announcements, that there's not supposed to be any sound, and that essentially it would be more or less LED. Now, there may be some digitized pictures, right? Because I don't know how advanced the system is, but I'm not aware that there'll be any sound playing out to the public.
Yeah, no, I don't think there'll be any sound, no. I think it's going to be more, they might have, let's say video of, say the pastor, waving or something like that, but I don't think anything more than that. It's basically our biggest concern was just the brightness at that point in the evening. And we felt that because of the, I guess they have a self-imposed curfew on the use of it, that it fit fine. And we give the church what they want, and at the same time, try to not inconvenience the community.
Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? All right. Carlton, thank you for that report.
Thank you.
Next up, item number 6, committees to report. First up is Economic Development and Employment. Bill Flournoy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Singletary.
Sure.
I gave a brief report at the full board meeting, but I want to give a little update. When the bids came to us and gave us presentation of where they were standing after COVID, after the 1 year of shutdown, they basically had an ask for them to ask them what do they need from us to help them going forward. The committee members also asked quite a few questions, and we composited a number of issues that the bids feel are important to address going forward, which is why I'm so happy about the planning together situation, because these are questions that we can ask them also. So that's something that we think is very important, because there's some things that we cannot do as a board, but if the funds are being available to actually enact some of the things that the bids need, that's something that we should bring forward at the planning together committee meeting, or the meeting itself. So we're looking forward to that. In addition to that, I got a slight update with the job and fair that we're looking at, a job and resource fair. What we're looking at right now is we're going to have a meeting with the Brooklyn Navy Yard to determine whether or not this is something that can actually go forward in June. Based on what's going on right now, we're not fully open yet, and we're worried about also social distancing. So we're going to sit down with the Navy Yard and decide whether this is something we can do in June or something that we should push back until September, okay? Because right now, we don't know what's going to happen going forward, okay? Because we can have a shutdown, or we could have something as far as a pullback on what we can actually do as far as how many people will be available. And we want as many people to have access to this as possible. So we're going to see what happens next week and make a determination there, then let the full board know once we have that discussion. And as far as that, the next meeting is going to be May 5th. We're going to be looking at NPower We're also going to look at Access VR, and we may have a third, but we haven't had it yet as a confirmation yet. But this is going to be a light meeting for the most part. But we're already going to start focusing going forward on the SDN-R, okay, as far as we're going to do for next year for fiscal year 2022. Okay, we might as well start getting a jump on this and see what we can do from there. That's the report for right now.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill? Okay, next committee, Health, Environment, and Social Services. Mr. Brandon Smith.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I want to talk a little bit about our discussion items from our last meeting because we spent the general meeting talking about the liquor licenses. I really can't stress enough the degree of interest that our committee has in matters of health equity. And at our last meeting earlier in the month, we watched a movie as part of a PBS series that really related to the work of these two doctors, Collins and David, who had performed a study really attacking a big question. Why do African American women have premature babies at a rate that's approximately twice of white women? And what was really fascinating was to learn over the course of this documentary that this isn't a factor that's just related to socioeconomic or educational status. It's a circumstance where the gap actually widens between white and African American women when wealth and education increase. And these two doctors, Collins and David, performed a pretty intricate study that involved testing both white women who were living in the United States, African American women living in the United States, and people actually from Africa. And what was really stunning was that the Africans and the white women performed about the same over the course of the study in terms of the rate of premature birth, whereas the African American women had babies that weighed 8 to 9 ounces less. And over the course of the documentary, it went into detail about how stress and the increase of stress hormones plays a role in inducing pregnancy at an earlier rate through documented known factors about the impact of stress on things like restricting blood flow to the placenta, as well as causing inflammation to the uterus, which may cause a birth to occur prematurely. And over the course of this really extensive documentary, we began to see that the real only factor that you can draw from this is that a chronic lifetime of racism is the only difference between these different women who are experiencing these issues. So in the course of our committee meeting, we discussed sort of how we can approach this problem proactively. And I think going forward, one thing that we're going to do is to try to take a lens towards the impact that our committee's decisions have in this area and other areas where we can support this issue of stress, bringing attention to it both within the profession but in the broader community. I think it's going to be a very big thing that we can attack in district needs, but also maybe in a project in the future. So it was a very good committee discussion in that regard, and we were really happy to have that. We also had our standard COVID-19 update, which I reported on a bit at the general meeting, where we noted some increased testing, but also increased cases in the prior week in Brooklyn Heights, as well as continued high prevalence of the virus and lower vaccination rates in Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Bedford-Stuyvesant, and also Williamsburg, which seemed to be like the highest incident in all of the different neighborhoods here. It was definitely concerning to see that Fort Greene and Clinton Hill continue to possess lower vaccination rates, and something that we're also going to have to continue following up on, because it's a reminder of the issues that are really prevalent throughout the United States of people who are not getting enough exposure to the vaccine, or for some reason the vaccine isn't taking hold in certain communities. That's something else that we'll try to partner on. And finally, I'm sorry to have a little bit longer of an update, but we briefly discussed, it was like about 9 p.m., so we didn't have enough time, but we're going to discuss it more on our next meeting. We're working on a joint project with the Youth Education Cultural Affairs Committee related to childhood asthma, where a doctor from our December meeting, Dr. Reed Caldwell from NYU Langone, will be hopefully providing some education to parents. We hope a holistic approach to parents, students, and staff in District 13 and District 15. And I think we have a great partnership with the Youth Education Cultural Affairs Committee in that regard, and are looking very much forward to working with them at the next meeting. But I have to give credit to Ms. Masso, who raised this idea with us in the first instance, and we'll have more to report in our next meeting. But that's all that I have to say for now. Happy to take any questions.
So Brandon, number one, never apologize for giving information. So thank you for that. Number two, any questions for Brandon? Bill.
Yeah, Brandon, currently right now, there's a lot going on as far as individuals not taking the second shot, okay, of the COVID virus. And also there's now centers being opened up to basically do walk-ins. In the areas where we're having low vaccinations, what's the story as far as opening up just simple walk-in centers where, you can just simply walk in without an appointment? And also, what do you think about the individuals who aren't taking second shots?
Well, I mean, my own personal opinion is maybe a little long on that respect, but I'm not going to. It's been an inordinate amount of time. I think that's something that we can feed back to the city health department the next time we meet with them, in terms of trying to promote the use of walk-ins in the specific neighborhoods. I think our conversations previously with the health department about addressing the disparity between different neighborhoods getting the vaccine has been sort of engaging with community leaders to try to speak to people and get people they trust to motivate them to go out and take the vaccine. But I think that's a fairly reasonable suggestion to promote the use of walk-in clinics in a particular area. And it'd be interesting to hear a real expert's point of view on that. As for people who have not taken the second shot to the vaccine, I don't honestly understand how that works. But I can understand that people have difficulties that not everybody has in the course of their life that may cause them to miss it for one reason or another. I think it's sad. It's something that I saw a statistic earlier today or yesterday that showed there were a very, very high number of these people throughout the United States who have not taken the second shot. And it's something that we need to continue to follow up on and try to make sure that the folks who've had the first shot get the second shot, so that, because the vaccination is supposed to work that way. I mean, that's about all I can say in that regard.
So Brendan, I just have to say this, and I hope this comes across as very funny. Your day job had you well prepared to answer that question, because for full transparency, Brandon is not a healthcare professional, but he answered that, and I think his day job got him prepared to give the safe and very professional answer. Job well done, Brandon. I was waiting to see how he was going to answer that, but job well done.
Well, look, I mean, I will say that it is kind of honestly my opinion. I think,
Right.
Everybody has an instance to sort of think from their own perspective, like, and certainly if I were to get the first shot, I got the one shot Johnson & Johnson myself, but, if I had gotten the two shot, like, I could never imagine not going back to get the second shot. But there are a lot of people who don't live life with the same privileges that I have. So honestly, I can't say that I expect everyone to do that, or that I would find that there to be something wrong in that regard. I think there needs to be probably more research into it to understand why this is occurring and to see what we can do to get more people vaccinated overall. And that's my honest opinion. I mean, I'm not lawyering it up.
But I will say this, I think the conversation that we're having now, and deferring to the question that Bill raised, the taking the vaccines, in my opinion, is an extension of the unknown, the uncertainty that has been a theme throughout the pandemic. And so, in instances where the education doesn't resonate in a manner that people can embrace, in cases where some neighborhoods aren't having an effective form of education, in cases where if the communication is driven through the digital environment, but you don't have access to get to the digital environment, it becomes an additional challenge. And so, as I listen to this conversation, I'm more and more, I was thinking about this for a while, but given the way our agendas work, it's really tough. But I'm going to work closer with the office. We have to be able to spend some time at our general body meeting, really discussing the pandemic and the vaccine and ways to beat this. And while I still recognize that that is still within a digital context, I'm hopeful that because the meetings are posted out on YouTube and because we have an excellent secretary in the way our minutes are captured, that information can get out to the communities in a way that alleviates some of the fear and apprehension that may exist, but also in a way that is informative and educational so that more and more people can make the decision based on science and not solely on hearsay if that's the case. But thank you again. I think this was a good conversation. And once again, to the committee for taking away the items that we just vote on and know that there's other things that are discussed that are helpful to the community we serve. Thank you. All right. Next to report, Parks and Recreation, Barbara Zoller-Gringer.
Good evening, and I'm sorry I was late to the meeting. We just following up on Brandon's. I think we've already had someone come and talk about the vaccine at the general meeting, but I don't think it wouldn't hurt to have someone come back again. It's still an ongoing concern, and what I've heard is that the demand for the vaccine isn't as great as it was. So if we could get more people on board, that would be great. So turning to Parks and Recreation, and being in a park is a good way to reach out to other people. But we had a really interesting meeting last Monday night. Excuse me. We had representatives from almost 10 different park friends groups. And it really was very interesting. If you weren't familiar with the variety of parks, we had, South Oxford Park Tennis Crew, we had Golconda Skate Park, we had Fort Greene, Commodore Barry, Cadman Park, and Friends of Kyler Gore, the Hillside Dog Park, and 16 Sycamores Playground. And so it was interesting to hear about those different places and what they offer, to hear from the people in charge, and in some cases, in particular between the Fort Greene Conservancy and Commodore Barry Park, those groups have actually worked together to get some grant funding to help staff the park. So I think that's great that these two groups were working together. That's one of the things we'd like to see and foster. So we listened to not only hear about the different parks and the different events they're doing, how there's certain events they usually do, they haven't been doing during the pandemic, and what they've been able to do despite that. And we did listen very carefully to their needs, looking towards our statement of needs coming up. And there's some of the universal issues were trash. There's an increase in trash. There are certain resources that they have they'd like to have more of, and universally almost, as you might expect, the issue of bathrooms came up, and one of our committee members suggested perhaps porta potties would be an easy, less expensive way to deal with that on a short-term basis. And that suggestion was met very well by anyone who was listening. So it was very interesting. And I'm hoping next month we have our representative from the Parks Department. So I'm hoping we'll be able to see if we can do some advocating on that issue, because it is very important. The other thing, almost at least half the people who spoke were in agreement with, is how wonderful Delancey Nelson is from the Partnership for Parks. She really helps these groups get resources, have them connect with each other, and she herself is a terrific resource, and she's spoken to our committee more than once, and it shows you how these resources are helpful for our parks and generate so much goodwill and resource capability. And so that was really great. And we have members of our committee going out to parks themselves, some of these same ones, to check them out and give us a report back. So thank you.
Barbara. Any questions for Barbara? Great. Next committee to report, Transportation and Public Safety. Julia Cullen-Chung.
Good evening, everyone. We had a very full agenda on the 15th. We had 4 presenters. The first was EDC presenting the New York City Ferry ADA improvements. You may have noticed that the Fulton Ferry Landing in Dumbo has been closed as of April 5th. The EDC announced that they would be taking 8 to 10 weeks to make the ferry access ADA accessible. However, as of the meeting date on the 15th, the construction work had not yet started, and their planned completion date of Memorial Day would have been impossible with the 8 to 10 weeks if you calculate it out from the start date. They said they were waiting for a permit that hadn't yet been in hand. And as of now, I don't think the construction has started yet. And the ferries have been shut down. There's been no access. And it's going to take another 8 to 10 weeks from when they actually do start. So the planned improvements are going to move the current ferry location from south of Barge Music to north of Barge Music on the wooden onto the wooden pier where the ice cream factory is. There will be not only the queuing for the ferry, there will also be a new restaurant and the ice cream factory, all on that wooden pier. So we thought that their layout, which was very conceptually based, was not terribly accurate in terms of how the queuing happens, because people have strollers in Brooklyn Bridge Park, people have bikes that they take onto the ferries. The queuing is actually much more spread out than they depicted. So we asked that they come back to us with a more accurate and measured schematic. And the ferry had already been shut down by the time they came to us. So we were also a little bit disappointed that they hadn't come to us in the planning stages, but they did explain that they had tried to reach out to the board office, but due to technical reasons they emailed an old email address. I think it was the RR email address that we had that they did not get through. So, you know, we didn't hold them to task for that because that's a technical difficulty. The second presentation was made by the Department of City Planning and the MCTA. It was the same zoning for transit accessibility that was heard by the Land Use Committee, but it was an informal presentation for us because we didn't have, you know, we weren't the main committee that was hearing it, so we didn't vote. Like the Land Use Committee, we did have the same issues of the number of stations that would become accessible even with this with the zoning text amendment. So we supported the efforts to bring more accessibility to the subways. We liked the zoning bonus component of the proposed zoning text amendment. It would expand an already existing bonus system and make it more accessible, so potentially more usable. The easement, I think there were, you know, similar discussions as the Land Use Committee. it was very dense. And we think that there's a lot for people to still think about. There were mentions of ADA subway stations that have already been built by developers in Community District 2. Elevator maintenance is an issue that was brought up. So we did note that perhaps more detailed specifications would be worthwhile to put into the framework of this new text amendment. The third presentation was by Flixbus, and that is an intracity bus transit operator who is looking to put a bus station in downtown Brooklyn. And we thought that was a good idea. It's nice to not always have to go to Manhattan to be able to go to take intracity transit. The locations that were proposed were, there were pros and cons to them, and we generally supported them finding a location close to Atlantic Terminal to be close to that mode of transit. I think that Sid and Cheryl might be able to recall where the which cities the bus services. I think it was DC and plans for Boston, but I don't think that, I don't remember exactly.
Philadelphia also?
Philadelphia. There were also issues of the bus stop taking away several parking spaces, even though it would only be used 6 times a day for 10 minutes a day each.
And Richmond as well.
Thank you, Richmond, Virginia. The fourth presenter was the DOT, and they came in last minute to our already full agenda, but they came to present the bike lane upgrade for the Brooklyn Bridge. So that was something that our committee and this community board supported. We had supported the Brooklyn Bridge Forest proposal. That was a very innovative proposal that had gone through a city council competitive process, and that was the winner, and they presented it to us, and we had supported that. The mayor had also charged the DOT to get a bike lane built in the roadway of the Brooklyn Bridge. It did not seem like the DOT considered very many alternate proposals. They did not really even consider the Brooklyn Bridge Forest proposal. They have a particular proposal that they are implementing ASAP that will have implications on our neighborhood that we were very concerned about. For example, the DOT proposal will ban right-hand turns onto the Brooklyn Bridge from Tillery Street. So those 2 car lanes right now that turn right onto the Brooklyn Bridge will not be able to do that. All of that traffic will have to be rerouted through the neighborhoods. So they will go up J Street, this will affect Concord Village, cars will get up there and they will have to, I don't know. It's gonna be it's gonna be a mess. Sid made a very good suggestion of reducing traffic and having a single lane turn into the Brooklyn Bridge, up car traffic. So it will reroute some of the traffic, but not all of it. So we generally support, of course, the getting of a bike lane on the Brooklyn Bridge. There's also concerns about the width of the lanes. The lanes would only be 4 feet wide. There was no added lighting, no thought about security of bikers at nighttime. So it seemed like there was a mandate. They're getting it out as soon as possible. They did recognize that, hey, maybe in the future we can consider some studies and more engineering, but we're just getting this out for now. And they're only doing one road bed. They're not doing a road bed on each side. So this was also something that was not voted upon because it's happening. And if Cheryl or Sid don't have anything to add, that concludes our committee report.
So Juliet, thank you for
The construction's already started, by the way, for the 1 lane. the construction's already started. They started the construction before they came to us.
Yeah, I was going to say, Julia, thank you for updating us on that FYI for the last item, because essentially that's what it is. It's just the FYI. The bus proposal, not too long ago, I do recall where on Flatbush, what is now closed but was the Applebee's, just to give a location. The Greyhound bus used to pick up and depart passengers from that location. And then on, I think it was Livingston Street, where it used to be the garage that I think now is a high rise. There used to be some form of interstate transportation via bus. Is this proposal that you referenced along the lines of trying to replace that
So
that
it would
population?
supplement that, actually. There is still a Greyhound bus stop on Livingston Street.
Okay.
And one of their proposals was to piggyback on that bus stop and extend it.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. I see Ms. Peterson had a hand up. Denise?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Nice to see all of you. Thank you for acknowledging me, Chairman Singletary. I just, listening to conversations that I've heard, over the past weeks, and when I hear about traffic and transportation, I could not sit here and not at least bring up this idea that all of this traffic would be going through Farragut houses, which I think is a very, very concerning for me, as it is for many of the residents down there. It truly negatively impacts that entire community, that those buildings, 1,400 units, 10 buildings from floors 1 to 14. And we're talking about seniors who have lived there for many years, and many of who lived there from the day that the buildings had gone up. I think it's a tremendous safety issue. I think that it impacts not just the seniors, but the mothers with children, the children going to school, crossing to go to the store from a certain side of the housing development. And I think it just seems like it was just a tremendous disregard for the people who live in public housing, namely Farragut houses, mostly. And I think that I think that the community board should continue to be very vocal about that matter in the interest of those 10 buildings called Farragut Housing Development. I don't know if they considered the fact that it impacts them through the admissions process. You have heavy respiratory issues, asthma rates, and all of that, and you have all of this traffic. For someone to believe that all of this traffic should be directed going through there, I think is just unconscionable. And I just wanted to make that statement. I thought it was important. And I would love to lend my voice to that public housing development and those who occupy within. So that's my comment.
I'm on mute. Bill.
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chairman. I was wondering about the ferry, considering the fact that they don't even have a permit yet and they haven't begun construction on that, and the layout they're suggesting it's not going to be something that's going to be beneficial to the individuals there. as far as the ice cream parlor and also the new store, so the restaurant that's going to be opening up on that pier. Is it possible for us to actually ask them to delay the construction of that? Okay, because we're going to basically go into the summer. Okay, if they start doing this in the summer, as far as construction, it's going to be a mess.
So I don't disagree with your analysis. Yes, it's possible for us to send a letter. Am I optimistic that there'll be any action on it? No. I think we'll just go on record of having voiced our concerns, but I don't know that it will present any positive change. However, I am open to putting forth the letter so that at least they understand our position on community board too. I'm happy to do that. If there's no opposition in the meeting tonight, but yeah, I'm just not. I don't have a lot of faith. Put it like that. Juliet.
Although there was disappointment in the committee, nobody suggested delaying it because I think if the work is going to get done, we'd rather it get done now than during summer or maybe even later when COVID is done and everybody wants to use transportation again.
Did you have a timeline on when they would actually? I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Did they have a timeline on when they actually thought they were going to get the permit? Or is it still open?
She made it sound imminent 10 days ago.
And the other thing I wanted to bring up was the Greyhound. Okay. The Greyhound, they used to have a ticket station on Livingston and Hoyt, but that's since been closed because they couldn't have, for whatever reason, that front's no longer there. So I don't know if we still have Greyhound running through here. Does anyone know if we still have Greyhound coming through downtown Brooklyn?
Flixbus represented the Greyhound was still there, but I don't know if that was accurate.
Brandon.
Thanks. I'll try to be brief. The diagram that was up, and I just mentioned this because I'm no transportation expert, but this bike lane thing on the Tillery Street is right in front of my house, and I see what happens when they close down the Brooklyn Bridge. I've got to figure that the traffic isn't actually going to flow in the direction that they're suggesting, because whenever they close down the Brooklyn Bridge, the traffic turns right onto the service road, goes up the street to Sam Streets, then does a U-turn and goes right back onto the Brooklyn Bridge on-ramp. So you're going to have car after car in traffic of people continuously making U-turns on Sand Street to get onto the Brooklyn Bridge on-ramp. And that, as opposed to where they say the traffic will be directed, is where the cars are going to go.
Any other comments or questions? Juliet, thank you to you and the committee. Great report. A lot. Great report. Actually, moving on to item number 7 of the community business. Let me just pause a minute. Betty, I see you. Let me just pause for a minute. I'm sorry. I see you now. Youth Education and Cultural Affairs, Betty Fivers to report. I'm sorry.
Good evening. How's everyone tonight? Okay. I gave the full report on our last committee meeting at the full board meeting, but I would like to piggyback on what Mr. Smith talked about. His committee is getting much more engaged in looking at health equity. He's looking at, as he mentioned, the disparities in maternal complications. And we've also discussed several times about the asthma rates in the school children in our district and working together. So I've made a little progress in looking at this to get more data. So I'll be reporting to my committee and working also with Mr. Smith on the American Lung Association has a program called Open Airways, and I'm getting data as to which schools are using this program and some of the asthma rates in our community, so that we're going to have more data to work on in terms of working with the school district to have a more robust plan for education of the students as well as parents, because the superintendent had said she would like parent workshops. So we might be able to work with the American Lung Association in these initiatives. So that's very exciting to actually have data to go beyond what our gut feeling is. And it's very interesting that the transportation is looking at the way the cars are diverted, and that also those car emissions are related to the increase in asthma in certain communities. So I think we're all going in a good direction in terms of advocacy for the people who live in our communities. So I want to thank, all the committees that seem to be looking at these issues.
Eddie, that's your report?
Because
Oh, okay. Thank you.
we haven't met since the last time I reported, so.
No, I got it. I didn't know if you were reporting or making a statement, so it was perfect. No problem at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I can move on to item number 7. Before I get to other committee business, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge our good friend, Mr. Dwight Smith. Dwight Smith, as you all know, gives an excellent report on the things happening at Atlantic Yard. Mr. Smith, I don't want to catch you off guard. If you do have a report, would love to hear it. If not, we can set you aside for another meeting, and you let us know. You're on mute, Dwight. There you go. Oh. No, you're back on mute. You're back on mute. Now you're off.
It's weird. Okay, now I'm on. I can report. But I think I'd rather come next week or next month. But I want to make sure that everybody did get my most recent report, along with the presentation that the the Brooklyn Speaks Coalition sent out and made to for a meeting of the candidates for councils in 33, 35, and 36. Taya I sent those in. I know that the report itself got it as part of the was part of the materials for the general meeting, but don't know if the specific presentation got to the executive committee members, because I'd like for them to see this. What I'm referring to, folks, is the I think in one of the last report you got, you mentioned that the Brooklyn Speaks was sending a letter to the governor around what it believes should be the next set of objectives that the development should undertake, and that includes much deeper discounted buildings. Oh, geez, and also there was to be a presentation made to these members, and that report, which is fairly long, really summarizes what's happened from the very beginning of the development activity 15 years ago to where we are today. And it really is super informative. The last portion of which gets at and you did send it around, and the last portion of which gets at the asks that Brooklyn Speaks has for the ESD folks and the governor. But maybe we should talk about it on the next round after everybody's had a look, and maybe there's some questions to be answered. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Just to confirm, has everyone had a chance to receive and review the document that Mr. Smith just referenced? I don't get a consensus that we have. So, Mr. If you would, could you work with the office, have us disseminate that to the exec committee, including Daughtry and Sid, and then we'll get a chance to take a look at that.
Okay, fine. And then we can discuss it next month.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, great.
Are there any other committee business to discuss in line with item number 7?
Yeah.
So, Betty?
Yeah, hi. I would just like to mention, as a very active compost advocate, the mayor's office announced that composting will resume, but it's not as strong a program as the program that was canceled. It will require people to opt in, and it again has disparities between wealthier neighborhoods and lower income neighborhoods in the area of environmental justice. So I would recommend that if we can get speakers to the appropriate committees and also do some public information through like our voice, our bully pulpit, so that people know that they have to opt in.
Good point.
Okay.
Can I just had a quick follow-up
Go ahead, Jessica.
to that? I think that'd be something really exciting to talk about at Hess. And I am wondering, I'm happy to look into what the right organizations might be. I know I've heard Antonio Reynoso and Catherine Garcia talk a lot about this. Obviously, they're candidates for higher office, so we wouldn't ask them necessarily to come speak. But I think thanks for bringing it up.
The Brooklyn SWAB, which is the Brooklyn Solid Waste Advisory Board, we'll be happy to send a speaker.
Interesting. Okay. Cool.
Because they've been reaching out to some community boards. So if we reached out to them, yeah, that would be the one. Because it's within city government, but it's not political. They're not running for office as
right.
Yeah, we should be able to work with the board office to figure out the right time to arrange such a conversation.
So Betty, how do you opt in? How did they tell you how we opt in?
Well, they just had to make the announcement quickly for Earth Day so that, it would be a thing. But it's going to be digital. So that means the people who aren't computer savvy or don't have that, don't have the computer, that's a problem. But it's going to be made available to opt in digitally sometime in the summer, and it will start in October.
All right, so let me do this in this order. Let me call on Sid and then Barbara in that order.
And I just sent an email around. The city announced that they expect to finally issue something on the triple cantilever BQE in May. Exactly what they're going to announce or do is not clear, but given what just happened at Fulton Ferry with work being done without notice, or on the bike path before they came to us, they started work. I really think that the board should write a letter to the commissioner and ask him to, maybe even make the announcement before a board meeting called. Obviously, this is all mostly in CB2. I know it affects CB6 and some other people, but I really do think that this is something that's so major that we really should ask the commissioner to come and make the presentation to us before they make the announcement and start doing work on it.
Yeah, Sid, I saw your email from earlier. I happen to agree with that. We'll work to get a letter drafted, which I can find, and see if we can have the Commissioner Gutman come and present to the full board. And that way, there'll be enough people to give, to receive information and give feedback. I think that's a good idea. I have no personal concerns with that.
He lives in Brooklyn Heights. I mean, this is it's not far for him to go.
Yeah, no, actually, it's not far for him to dial in. I mean, we'll still be virtual, and I think, but you're right. The majority of that does impact us, and it is it is appropriate for us to ask for that level of personal attention to the cantilever. So I definitely make sure we can follow up and get that out. I'll work with the office to get that set up. Barbara?
Right. I have a question on a different issue. We are getting towards the end of our season, so to speak. And I'm wondering, I think this came up briefly before, but I'm wondering if the board office has given any thought or what thought to how we're going to conduct our meetings come September. And if sometime either in September or beyond, we're thinking of holding in-person meetings, if we've started looking into where those meetings might take place.
Yeah, so we haven't made a final decision on that yet. We're still evaluating right now. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to work through the return to office process, and as we get further information, we'll start to engage in what a future would look like. Right now, we're trying to embrace and hopefully hold on to as long as possible the executive order that allows for virtual meetings such as this. And if we can have some combination of the two, or
it'd be great.
Have the state think outside the box and use something like this as a method going forward, that would be great. But right now, this is all speculation. We don't have any information to answer your question.
Right, because we've gotten, tonight we don't have a huge attendance, but most meetings we have a much larger attendance than we do in person, especially for the committees. So a hybrid would be wonderful.
Yep, I think all of us who chair committees or serve as vice chairs are fully aware of that point, and definitely do not disagree with what you're highlighting.
Thanks.
Any other business? All right, so we're up to community forum. Oh, Bill?
Yeah, I was just wondering, in preparation of that, is it possible for us to find out who has been fully vaccinated as far as the exec committee and who has not? Because we're going to do a hybrid. It would be a good idea.
Let me just interrupt you there, right? I know that there's this sense of people wanting to, for various reasons, be required to ask for vaccination and information like that. The fact of the matter is, that's still you're still guided by HIPAA as it relates to that. So there is a law and a framework there. If people want to make their own personal decisions to do that, that's fine. But I intentionally interrupted you because I don't want to have a conversation about something that is still managed through some type of legislation and a law that would kind of get in a gray area. So in regards to the way we answered Barbara's question, as we move to what would be a hybrid, I think there's going to be some specific guidance from the state and the city on what that looks like and what the requirements are. So your point is, again, well taken. We just have to be a little more patient as we get more information around that, because I do think the ideal scenario for when we reconvene, and I might add, don't leave tonight's meeting or any other meeting thinking that you're going to get July and August off. There's a lot going on, so we'll probably have one, if not both. But that being said, back to my regularly scheduled program, we probably going to have to get some direction and some guidance on what a hybrid model would look like, and if in fact some form of proof in a very secure way that doesn't violate HIPAA is a possibility. I'm sure we would adhere to that. Absolutely. I don't know. Did you have anything else? Okay. Any other items to discuss under agenda item 7, other community business, committee business? Okay, great. Moving up to item number 8. I don't see a lot of non-board members, but I'll open it up to see if there's any items for the community forum. Once again, I don't just want to make sure, because I don't want to be rude. Are there any items for community forum? Okay, great. I think the next item is adjournment. I'll entertain. Yeah, okay. Thanks, Betty. Thanks, Carlton. Good night, everyone. Get home safe, those who have to commute.